Welcome to Collegial Conversations with your host, President of Intent Clinical, Diana Clark.
Thank you for joining Collegial Conversations. I'm Diana Clark, and I'm the president of Intent Clinical, and I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Lakia Holmes. Lakia is a senior producer at branded content at the Bleacher Report, an award-winning journalist, and perhaps most pertinent to this conversation, a proud single mom by choice. After focusing on her career for many years, she made the decision in her late 30s to pursue motherhood, beginning a fertility journey that ultimately brought her into the world of IVF. Along the way, she faced unique challenges as a Black woman navigating infertility, including the difficulty of finding a Black sperm donor and the reality of how her choice would impact her professional career. In May of 2024, Lakia welcomed her daughter, Isla, and has since been sharing her story to raise awareness about fertility and representation within the Black community. Most recently, she was featured in Forbes, and she's using this voice of hers and her platform to support other women navigating their fertility journeys, all the while finding moments to cheer on her beloved New York Mets, and Isla. Lakia, we're so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for that amazing introduction. How are you?
I'm doing great. So let's start with you're in your 30s, you're in a career trajectory, you are on that slipstream of success. What was going on inside that made you think, I want to add something else that will completely change my life?
I was just at a place where I felt that that was the one thing that was missing. I had I I had put off for a long time starting a family because I wanted to focus on my career. I work in sports, I work in media, so it's a hard industry to break into, hard industry to really start to make like really good money in. And I had always felt like my career wasn't exactly where it needed to be. I started a little bit later. I went to grad school, so that kind of pushed things and had stuff along my career journey that kind of put me where I felt like I was behind compared to a lot of the people that I went to school with. And so I was working like a lot of temp producer positions, a lot of seasonal jobs with like baseball teams and stuff. So nothing like that could really financially support myself and a kid. And then when I got to Warner Brothers Discovery and I settled down and started moving up, it was like, okay, I am not 100% where I wanna be career-wise, but I'm a lot better than where I was a year, 2 years prior. So it was like, "Okay, I think maybe I can do this." Like, I know it's gonna be hard, but I feel stable enough to where I was like, "Okay, now is I think is the time."
Now is the time. And in that moment, and it's not always this struck by lightning moment, but you have a moment, you make a decision, I'm going to be a single mom, I'm going to get pregnant. Tell me, did you anticipate the difficulty in actually getting pregnant at that point, or was that a journey in and of itself?
That was a journey in and of itself because how it really started was like, okay, so I'd been working at my company for about a year, finally became full-time. I'd started off as a temp producer, became full-time. So I was able to have full-time health benefits, get that 401k, get the medical, dental, the vision. And so my company offered fertility benefits as part of the package. So I said, okay, well, let me look into just at least now freezing my eggs. I was out and I was dating and stuff, hadn't found anyone to like settle down with, but like, well, let me just look into it. I don't know much about it, don't know much about the process, but I know that this can be a backup plan. But I was never thinking I would ever really use the eggs. I was like, it was just like a good to have
Right.
thing. And so it was during the process of the testing that I found out that my fallopian tubes were blocked and that I'd only have a 2% chance of conceiving naturally. So that kind of changed the trajectory of everything because I went in thinking I was just going for one thing, and then walking out of those series of appointments knowing like, "Wait, this was not part of my plan at all." Because the doctor said, "If you're gonna get pregnant, like, IVF is going to have to be the way," and I was like, "I don't know anything about IVF like that. I don't know anyone that's gone through IVF. All I know is it's hella expensive, and I don't know if I can afford that, even with our coverage." Like, so it just kind of forced me to just be like, "Whoa, like, let's take a step." Like, clearly your body is working against you. You don't have all the time in the world. You're stable enough. I was feeling comfortable enough within myself, not just financially, but just personally and mentally, that I said, "Okay, like, okay, let's do this." But then with that comes like, well, if I'm gonna do this by myself, like, on one income, doing what I do, working the hours that I work, knowing that I have to travel the way I travel, it really forced me to be really to, like, really sit down and think about the logistics of, like, how could I make it work? So even before I gotten pregnant, I was like, "Okay, what does childcare run in my area?" Would it be better for me to go the nanny route versus daycare? Like, so I had to really think about all of the things that come with having a career and trying to plan a family because I had to plan it around shoots. Like, I was going through the IVF injections and stuff and still having to travel, still having to be on set, multiple times, constantly on flights, still wanting to try to maintain my social life. So it's like really learning how to balance everything from way before I even got pregnant.
I mean, being a single parent, that was preparation for what it was gonna be in the long run, right? Juggling everything by yourself.
Mhm. And I knew it would be a lot of juggling. Like I said, I mentally prepared myself. Like, I'm a very type A personality.
Good
So
job.
I so I plan like everything. Like, I have plan A through like F. Like, I'm always thinking, and that's also what's what helped me a lot in my career.
Sure.
Having working as a producer, I have to pay attention to a lot of details. I have to I'm overseeing a lot of different things, a lot of different people, and overseeing things that they have to do to ultimately help
Mhm.
the production come together. And that's all that parenthood is.
Right?
Parenthood, now
Yeah.
that I think about it, parenthood is really just one giant production. And we're all just managing a series or a group of people, places, and things, and
And
just
who's
trying to
in
put out,
charge of that production? I think it's Isla.
listen, okay, this little girl in the last 2 days, it's like, who runs this household? I've given up. She's 15 months now. She's full on in her, like, toddler, like, emotions and, like, feelings, and, like, she wants what she wants when she wants it right then and there. I can't put her and, like, and so it's like, "Okay, I listen, I if that's what makes you happy and content, go ahead.
Right.
Have at it." Like, it's not dangerous? Okay. So
Remember
that's what
very
life is.
vividly when my son was about that age, I was using apple cider vinegar in something, and he was insisting he wanted to drink it. And I was like, "No, you're not gonna like this." And it was a huge drama in the kitchen, and he was insisting, and I was saying, "He's really not gonna want this." So I was like, "Why am I fighting this? This is a lesson, it won't hurt him."
Exactly. I don't can you swear on this podcast?
You can say whatever you want.
It's what they call now the fuck around and find out parenting
Yes,
style.
yes. There you go. I just read about that. I just read about that.
And so that's you are a very early adopter.
I was an early
Because
adopter.
they'll be like, "Hey, listen, I tried to tell you. You didn't wanna believe me, so you had to find out for yourself."
Yes.
But life is the greatest teacher because you can tell me something all day long. It's not until I go ahead and experience it and be like, "Oh, you were right. I
So
get it now."
so you're plan A through Z. Many moms go into this with, "I'll figure it out as I go along." And tell me, what has been the biggest surprise to you?
The biggest I That's a good question. I think the biggest surprise to me, jokingly, I say, is how much I've had to negotiate with a toddler. Um, so there's that. But seriously, I think the biggest thing I've learned is that it really takes patience. And I had considered myself a patient person, but I've had to tap into levels, like to new levels of patience that I didn't even think
Mhm.
I had because, you know, I've never parented a 15-month-old before. Every day that I am a parent, it's a new day. It's a day that I haven't parented before. So, and Isla, she doesn't know it. Like I'm here to help teach her, to help guide her. You know, this is her first day as, 15 months and however many
Right.
days old she is,
Yeah, that's right.
So, it's been a real lesson on patience and giving myself grace.
Mm,
And the grace part, I'm not as I can be better. I could be better with that. I said to someone recently, I said, "I wish I could extend myself the levels of grace I extend others." So that's a work
I
in
love yeah,
progress.
that's a work in progress. So, I wanna go back to the IVF. What were the hurdles for you personally in going through an IVF process? Selecting a donor, all of those things. What was the biggest hurdle for you?
I think the biggest hurdle was that donor process because, I'd heard stories, I'd read articles, whatever. But it's not until you're in the process yourself that you realize just how wild and crazy it is that I'm sifting through a website trying to find the person that would, you know, like it's just it's wild when you think about it, and then when you're going through the process, and I'd heard and I'd read, about the challenges when it comes to finding, Black donors, and I remember when I first started looking, so this was probably, like, late 2021, early 2022, I started the process of searching, and I had tried to make a point of finding Black donors first, but it was so hard because there's just so many factors that go into it.
Mhm.
By the time I look at my genetic profile next to the donor's profile, and then we see that we both carry a trait for something, and then I am apparently one of the few people that is CMV negative. So it was important for me to find another CMV negative donor.
What is
Well,
CMV? Just so I know.
C CMV, so it's called like cytomegalovirus. I can't pronounce it. It's a medical term. And basically, it's something that most people contract as kids. It's like a virus.
Got it.
But but there can be risks of birth defects. So if you are a CMV positive person, you're more than likely are going to be told to look at other CMV positive people. Now, the majority of people out there are CMV positive because they've at some point in their lives
Danger.
come down with this virus, right? So me, I'm negative. So there's a lot fewer there was a the
Wow.
pool for me to choose from when it came to CMV became a lot smaller when you look at that compared to all the other genetic things that you have to look against when trying to choose a donor. So you have that, and then it's so when it came to looking for Black donors, I was already starting with a smaller pool compared to other groups, and then it just keeps getting smaller and smaller. And then you do find someone that's like, oh, okay, well, medically and genetically, this person is a fit. I look at their profile, I look at their essays that they've written, all these things, and I see like, okay, well, personality wise, like they feel like they're a fit. But then I go look to see the types of sperm that I need to buy, and then you're on a waiting list for months at a time. So I had initially picked a donor. It was a white donor. Medically, genetically, everything worked out. Personality profile, everything. I was like, okay, and I was like, this person seemed like a fit. So I felt comfortable with that, but I was on a waiting list for like 8 months. And in the meantime, I'm still like looking at other donors, but I was like, yeah, but I was like, no, I feel like this is the person. On a waiting list for like 8 months, waiting for this person to become available. 8 months goes by. I get a notification that he's being retired from the system. They were hanging his jersey in the rafters. He probably reached like the max number of pregnancies and live births, and so they had to siphon him out of the system. So I was like, I just spent all of this time waiting for a donor, and now I'm being told I have to basically start over again. And like I had like a list of other donors that I was
That's your
interested
plan
in.
B, plan C, and plan D.
Right. But then even some of those, like,
Mhm.
availability and all these other things. And I had gotten so frustrated and overwhelmed with the process. So I actually, after that happened, so I want to say probably like spring 2022, I took a pause and I just said, I just need to reset. Like I was just stressed out, overwhelmed. I was like, I just need a reset. So I gave myself permission to take a step back because I was like, in my mind, I had the timeline. I'm going to find the donor by this date. I'm going to do the implant the embryo about this time, give birth at this date. And I said, you know what? Let's just take a mental reset and just take a break and then come back to this in 2023. So that's what I did. And it was just like like when I say I gained a testimony of everything happens for a reason because I took that time off, reset, got my mind together, went on like vacation, just like just really got back to me and centered to me because I had become so overwhelmed with the process. Like February 2023, I get an email and it's just like through divine like intervention because just like a series of things. But long story short, I found the donor that would go on to be Isla's biological dad. And he was better than any person I'd seen prior to that. It was like, wait, no,
It
this is
was
the
meant
person.
to be. Yeah.
It was, yeah, it was meant to be. And he was a Black donor, so intelligent, well spoken, just like, I was like, where is this man in real life? Can I date him?
Right?
Like, cause he honestly, like, checked everything, and he just was, like, really kind and athletic, and I work in sports, so I was like, "Check," like, there were all these things about him, and I was just was like, "Yeah, this is the person that's meant to be the donor," and so I lucked out. And I'm very grateful, but the whole process was just, like, so eye-opening, and then, I would sit in these, like, different webinars and stuff of different sperm banks, and the one thing they would always say is, like, "We need more donors of color, specifically Black donors." Like, there is such a need out there, and there's just not enough supply to meet the demand, and then you end up, like, on waiting lists for months and months and months at a time, and then never sometimes even are able to get that person because either they've, been retired from the system or they wanna pull themselves from being donors or whatever. And so that, like, just breaks my heart. And then you have Black there was an article, I think, in a Washington Post some years ago, and it was while I was going through my process of finding a donor that this article came out. And it hit so hard because it was talking about the experience of finding Black donors, and then you had people who ended up using donors of different races and then faced backlash. You know? And so that's just it was that was such an eye-opening experience because I never thought I would find myself in that situation. I never knew anyone personally that had gone through that,
Right.
and so I'm just learning as I'm going and seeing all of this stuff go down in real time and seeing the conversation when it comes to finding Black donors and being like, "Yep, I get it now, I understand it," and so,
Yeah,
yeah, it was a lot. It's a hard thing to go through.
I would imagine. So before we close, because we've just had this amazing conversation, I want to hear from you. What was the best advice you've received during this whole journey?
Hmm, the best advice I received? I don't know, that's a really good question. I think probably the best advice I got from one of my patient care advocates I had during the process, because I would call them sometimes and just be crying and just, like, having meltdowns because I would just be so overwhelmed about the process and everything. And I think the biggest piece of advice, 'cause one my main patient care advocate was also a single mom by choice. So, it was just kinda just happened that we were, like, paired up together, so it was like so I could just go to her and vent to her about everything. And I remember, like, one of my venting sessions, I was just like, "I just don't think I can do this," like, I just had, like, a full-on panic attack, and she was like, "There is a baby there for you. There's a baby that's out there that's waiting for you to love on them and to just bless them." And so, you just have to stay positive. It's a hard process. It takes a lot out of you emotionally, physically, financially, but it's all worth it in the end. Like, going through IVF was not my plan, but I'm proud of myself for how I stood up to it and pushed myself through it because I don't like needles and I'm having to give myself injections multiple times a day. It takes a lot of strength to go through. And so she was like, "You're strong enough to do this. Keep going. Like, you know in your heart that this is what you want to do, and you're gonna be blessed so much on the other side." And I was, and, like, Isla is just, like, the best thing to happen to me, and I just look at her every day, and I'm like, "Yeah, I would go through it all over again."
100 times. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you fall off a cliff in love?
Like, I didn't know what I was having. That was as I was going through the IVF process, there was so much that was in my control that I said there I wanted the gender to be the one thing I did not want to control. So I had 4 embryos, I had 2 girls, 2 boys. The doctor was like, "What do you want to implant?" I said, "Whatever the strongest one is." She was like, "You sure you don't wanna pick?" I said, "No." She was like, "Well, grade-wise and strength, they're all, like, really strong up there." I said, "You pick. I trust you." And throughout the pregnancy, every doctor's appointment, "I don't know the gender. I don't know the gender. I don't want to know." They were like, "You wanna be surprised?" I was like, "Yeah." And I had always wanted a boy first. Girls come first in my family a lot. I had always wanted a boy, and I work in sports, and everybody's like, "You'd be such a great boy mom." So I thought for sure I was having a boy. So to give birth and to hear, like, it's a girl, and I turned to my family and I was like, "I have a daughter?" Like, I was, like, so shocked, like, I was like, "I have a daughter?" And then to see her, I was like, "Yeah." I was like, God knew exactly what I needed, and God felt like I needed a little girl, and to just I was just the, like, I had always heard about, like, it's a love like no other, but it just I can't describe it. It's just it's like, even on the worst days where I'm, like, running on no sleep and she's in full-blown toddler meltdown and stuff, I just look at her and I'm like, "You're the best."
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Well, Lakia, thank you very much for joining me this morning. Love talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
And for those of you who are watching this on our YouTube channel, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up.